Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to talk about fashion. More specifically, we are going to talk about a brand called Lip Service. Why are we talking about Lip Service? Let me tell you. Lip Service reached out to me and wanted to do a collaboration, but to anybody who is new to the subculture, that doesn't seem like much of a big deal because modern day lip service is not the same as the 90s to early 2000s lip service. If you were around back then, alternative, goth, what have you, that brand had a stranglehold on us. That was like the holy grail of things back, I want to say, peaked in the early 2000s. And we would wait with bated breath for those catalogs to be released. And it wasn't just a few things, because when they released their catalog each season, there were various lines. And it was probably, I want to say, anywhere between 4 to 6 new lines per season. And it wasn't just the women's, it was men's too, because I know a lot of you complain that there's not a lot of men's goth fashion, and it's always kind of been that way with fashion, and it is really annoying that women will always have the more elaborate and the better fashion that the men do. But Lip Service did not skimp when it came to men's fashion, and they really did push the envelope to the point where there was a lot more things that were more showy and things that a lot of guys nowadays would really probably kill for. So when it came to Lip Service, like I said, we would wait for those catalogs to come out. And it was very different when it was in the 90s, when I really first started wearing it. But that is not the first time that I actually saw Lip Service. But let me prepare. It is Italian soda time. Okay. The first time that I saw Lip Service was in the 80s. I want to say about 1988, because my little sister was born. We were living in Elmont at the time, which is like right on the border of Queens, Long Island. And my mother's friends, for some reason, they all worked in sex shops. I don't know why they all worked in sex. They also were strippers. There were strippers that worked in sex shops. But my mother, during the day, on my days off from school or even after school, she'd like to go and visit her friends at work. And where did she bring me? Into these sex shops. So the clothing that they had catered toward a lot of strippers as well, because they needed their kind of, they needed their garb, they needed their wares. I'm actually realizing now that this sounds a lot more like a trauma dump than it does like an anecdote, but I promise it's a story. It wasn't traumatizing because I was very much obsessed with the clothes in that store. Because if you remember back when they had like a lot of, in the 80s on MTV, it was a lot of glam rock videos, and they always had the groupies and the tiny little dresses and the skimpy things. And Lip Service back then, because they catered to a lot of that kind of rocker girl look, was also very compatible with the dresses that strippers wore. So that is when I first saw Lip Service, because in my mind I remember their old label, the tags and the dresses, like the 80s ones, and they had these tiny little dresses, skimpy with cutouts and metal O-rings. I remember these dresses because I wanted them. That is the first time I ever saw Lip Service. My second encounter with Lip Service was the very early 90s, when I started to go to more alternative stores. As I started to get involved in the alternative subcultures, I kind of became familiar with all the different stores that had the types of clothes that they had, but I wasn't quite venturing into the city yet. So it was the early 90s, I want to say around 94. The stores that I frequented at the time was Utopia.
Ahead of its time, not just another t-shirt store, Utopia goes beyond. With posters, tapestry, gothic clothes, and hard-to-find music. You want it? Utopia's got it. For footwear like boots, shoes, sneakers, and sandals. Utopia. Check it out for yourself. Incense, oils, candles, patches, stickers, hair dye, and body jewelry. Utopia, with 2 exclusive Long Island locations in Hicksville and Centereach. Check it out.
And Skull City. So Utopia and Skull City were located in Centereach, which is like eastern Long Island. But then I became aware that there was a even better Utopia in Hicksville, and it was even better. So Utopia and Skull City did carry Lip Service things. However, by that point, when I became sort of reacquainted with it, it had evolved. So it wasn't the kind of groupie slash rocker girl 80s glam rock look anymore. Now they were doing more Gothic vampire inspired things. The things that you probably have noticed if you ever Google 90s Goth, the types of dresses that you see, I think is now more commonly referred to as maybe trad, is what they were making. So I'm going to show you some examples of the lip service dresses. And I have some. I'm going to show you in this video at some point. I don't know if I'm going to just take them out and show you, or if I'm going to like put them on and model them for you. We'll see. But that is the second time I became acquainted with it. And I was like thick into Gothic fashion at the time, because even though in 94, I didn't quite make it into becoming a goth yet. That was 95. In 94, I was still very much alternative, and I was listening to, at the time, a lot of industrial, a lot of new wave, a lot of grunge, a lot of Riot Grrrl, and I wasn't quite into goth yet. I was trying to get into goth music, but it was very, very difficult for me because it just wasn't connecting yet. So I was still, despite not fully being into goth music, I was very much attracted to that aesthetic, and the dresses were just, they were beautiful, and I wanted them so bad. But what sort of budget does a 14-year-old have, and can I spend $100 on a dress now? So obviously it is not something that I could just easily throw down on. However, I did manage to get a lip service dress for Christmas when I was 15, and actually got into goth music. So when I started really getting involved in goth music and really getting heavy into it, my mother at the time really, I guess, wanted to nurture that, because she in the 70s was a punk. And being a punk, she saw the goth subculture kind of come to fruition, because goth being born of punk, you kind of see that thing take place, and you congregate together. So seeing me become a goth, I guess she really wanted to nurture that. So that's when I started kind of getting these kinds of things for Christmas, or if I wanted to go to these stores, she would like happily take me, because she was into that stuff too. So that is when I really first started seeing lip service in a different light, in a light that would become kind of part of my history. So the pieces that I was seeing back then were very much in the Lily Munster, Morticia Adams, Vampira kind of look to them, and Renaissance as well. So they kind of straddled that line between Edwardian, not quite Victorian, but medieval, and there was like a mesh between the two. So I would see a lot of the goth girls at the goth nights that I went to, or it was more alternative nights on Long Island before I was able to go into the city, wearing these things. And they were very ethereal looking. Like some of them, it was interesting the way that they kind of wore these things and incorporated it into their personal style. But some of them would make it look very ethereal, and then others would make it look like, again, what you would probably refer to as trad by today's standards. And it was a really interesting thing when you would see two people wearing almost the same dress, and how different they made it look by incorporating their own sort of personal styles. And I personally, I don't know, I would kind of go between. Back then, I was more of, I liked the vamp kind of look. I liked the high drawn eyebrows, because it gave it a little bit of a sinister dark look, and then the ethereal look. But then I saw people like Lisa Hammer as I got a little bit older, and Monica Richards, as I started gravitating toward the city, because now I'm in the goth scene, and I'm gravitating toward the city, and I'm going to these clubs, and I'm seeing more ethereal looks, and I'm also hearing ethereal music, and the combination of the two kind of captured me. So I would kind of go between. Grown up Angela, though, is definitely more ethereal leaning, for sure. Something lip service also did a lot of back then were PVC, and they had a lot of PVC pants. And nowadays PVC is associated with like aggro tech and cyber goth, but back then it was very much, I don't think I knew a single goth personally that didn't have a pair of PVC pants. And the way that they were worn was really cool, because the guys would wear them, and they would wear them with like their 20-hole docks, but we always wore them with band t-shirts. Sometimes I wore it with like a fishnet top that I made, and like a little crop top with it. One of my favorite looks, it was like I say casual look, but I'm literally in PVC pants, was my PVC pants, 20-hole docks. I had a white Bauhaus t-shirt, fishnet arms, and either a million rosary beads or my cat collar. So as I started gravitating more toward the city, as I was allowed to go in, I was able to not just go to the goth nights, but we would do shopping as well. And there's no way in hell I was like affording anything in any of those stores. But I was able to see a lot more of what lip service had to offer. And it was brilliant. I loved everything that I saw, wanted everything that I saw, could not afford a single thing that I saw. But that was sort of, it's easier nowadays for people to afford things because we didn't have things like Afterpay. If you were lucky enough to get a credit card, and I say lucky, and I don't actually mean, you would get the things that you wanted, but as a teenager or early 20s, you'd have a really low credit limit, you'd have really high interest rates, and then you'd have like maintenance fees. So if you bought a $100 lip service dress, in the end it cost you like $500. If it seemed worth it back then, you probably are still paying it off now. So I think things like Afterpay are definitely making things a lot easier for people, and it's something that we would have killed for today. But I kind of wonder if we had things like Afterpay today, what my closet would look like. Because I keep things. Fashion is something that's very precious to me, and it's something that I will hold on to. And I know that those are things that I wouldn't let go. Never. As we got toward the late 90s and the early 2000s, and then like around 2005, that's when we kind of became internet goths. And Lip Service launched their website. I forget what year they launched it, but I remember waiting with bated breath for the Lip Service catalogs to come out. Being part of different social groups online back then, we had like LiveJournal, you had Quinster's Hair Forum, we had, I don't know if MySpace was out yet. I can't remember, but I do remember them constantly being shared on places like LiveJournal. So we would wait for that Lip Service catalog to come out seasonally. When Lip Service would release their seasonal catalogs, there weren't just like one line or maybe like one or two things. It was several lines. And in those lines would be at least 5 dresses, tops, skirts, pants. And it wasn't just for women, it was men too. So men also had their pick. If Lip Service was doing the same thing now than it was back then, I know that a lot of the men in the goth subculture would have a lot more fun with fashion and a lot less issues finding it. But when these lines came out, we went crazy for them. So there would be like elaborate names for them. Some of them with names that would get you canceled. Hollywood Geisha, that was also one of my favorites. And even though they called it Hollywood Geisha, they had also like xiangsam dresses, which is like, I think it would also be referred to as a kipao, or like the Mandarin collar, which even though it was called Hollywood Geisha, they had kimono. The kimono I had, that was one of my favorites, but I also had the qiansam top and the skirt. It was so weird because they combined Chinese and Japanese. I don't know who was at that design table. It looked beautiful, but it was, if you were looking for any kind of cultural accuracy, you would not find it here. So it was called Hollywood Geisha. They had kimonos, but they also had kipao and the Mandarin collar, and they had the xiangsam, which is Chinese, and the fabric itself looked more traditionally Chinese and trimmed in things like, instead of frog closures for the neckline, it would have metal. And then instead of regular trim, it would be trimmed in PVC. And that's what really made it. It was this PVC trim that contrasted with the Chinese/Japanese. Yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, I think that might get you canceled. I was Filipino, so I didn't really know either way. I still am. The thing about 90s and early 2000s fashion is that a lot of things would probably be considered either insensitive or cultural appropriation today, but back then people really didn't know better. And I have kind of a theory on that. As the internet became more of a thing and more people had it in their households and kind of different cultures and different things, we began connecting with people from around the world, and we became more familiar with different cultures that we may have previously not known anything about. We kind of took that into ourselves. So people didn't see a separation. They just saw themselves as like citizens of the world. So it would not be uncommon to see somebody wearing, say, a dress from Hollywood Geisha, be it the Chinese or the Japanese version, whether it was the kimono or the qiangsam, with dreadlocks, a bindi, henna on the hands, and platform wooden shoes. So you'd have this person with like 12 different cultures just slapped to them. Now we're more culturally aware, as in we actually know a lot of things about different cultures because we want to know about them. We want to know about the people. We want to know where they're from. We want to know what they eat. We want to know about their history. But back then it was, what are they wearing? What do they look like? I want to look like that. Running around looking like this and knowing absolutely nothing about any of the cultures that are on their bodies. And that was definitely due to things being more visual and less intellectual, less of education and more of just, hey, look at this pretty shiny thing. And nowadays, fortunately, people do know a lot better. I don't want it to lose its fizziness. So I always put the cap back on like super tight. Oh shit. Brief interlude there. My friend just dropped by, and it made me think of something because we were kind of on that subject of like things nowadays that wouldn't fly but did back in the day. I think we should bring back just friends and family that we like, just dropping by to see how you're doing. It was so commonplace back in the 80s and 90s that like they used to have, I called them Entenmann's families. Entenmann's, like they have a whole line of like things like coffee cake. It's like grandma cake, but everybody loves Entenmann's. You know, they have like Pop'ems and cookies and like regular like different kinds of like little sheet cakes and stuff. But everybody had house Entenmann's where they would keep aside just in case company dropped by. So you'd take out the Entenmann's, you put the coffee on, so everybody was prepared. Nowadays, somebody knocks on your door or rings your doorbell, you're like frozen, or you dive behind your couch because you wouldn't dare show up at somebody's house without making like 20 pre-scheduled arrangements or texting and calling. But I think we should normalize that again. Like normalize showing up to kind of like check on your friends, check on your family, the ones that you like, not the ones that you don't like. Because sometimes we don't want that annoying aunt dropping by. I had a couple of those. You know who you are. But going back to lip service, I remember going through the catalog and then going to sites like LiveJournal and sharing my favorites and looking through other people's feed and seeing their favorites and discussing them. They even had a lip service LiveJournal just dedicated to all things lip service and where everybody would discuss the new lines. And I wish they would come back and even re-release. See, this would be something amazing because it would benefit the guys as well. If they re-released some old lines. I need to go through all of the other lines because I know there was definitely some problematic ones in there. I just can't think of them off the top of my head. But I know that back then, God, there were things that flew that really shouldn't have flown. Really shouldn't have flown. I want to show you the difference between the lines that lip service had. So I'm actually going to show you a few things. Had to get a couple of things. Oh, empty hanger, lost a dress. Man down! Escapee. I'm barefoot, and whenever I hear my bare feet or any bare feet slap on a wood floor, I always think of Gremlins. I have a shortage of hangers, so I have 2 dresses on a hanger here. So we have a Begotten dress and a lip service dress together. The first one I'm going to show you is probably circa 95, 1996. Earlier in the 90s, you would see more of the sweetheart neckline, and then as it got a little bit further into near the 2000s, that's when I think things started to square out, and that's how I kind of date things, because the next thing I'm going to show you is, I want to say, from 2000. And this dress is from the year 2000 on the dot. I remember seeing it in Hot Topic, and something I'm curious about, if maybe anybody has any information, I've noticed that back when I used to go into Hot Topic and get lip service things, there were specific lip service items in Hot Topic that wasn't ever anywhere else. So I think that lip service made things exclusively for Hot Topic, because I would frequent a lot of different stores. I had Utopia, Skull City, then I went to Dress to Kill, And that was all Long Island. And then going into the city, we had Religious Sex, Fifth Wheel, Trash and Vaudeville, those kinds of places, which never carried the same things as Hot Topic, even though lip service was a common brand back then. But this dress came from Hot Topic the year 2000, and it is lip service. And you'll notice the difference in the neckline. See the difference? A little bit more scoopy, but there's a definite sort of, but the velvet on this is different as well. And the thing that happened with this kind of velvet back then, it always faded out. You can see it has that very Renaissance feel. And these are actually two really good examples too. That one is very Vampira, Lillian Munster, very Morticia Addams, whereas this one is a lot more on the Renaissance side of things. Now, just a few years later, this was called something graffiti. I forget the name, and I had a few things from this line as well. And one of them was sort of a wrap kimono top with a pleather obi. In this fabric, there's a stain. Okay. So this one is a jersey knit, but it's the same kind of print. So everything had this print from this line, and it's like a cityscape print with a bit of graffiti thrown in on the side. Cutouts. You can see it's like very early 2000s. I think I got this somewhere between 2003 and 2005. So you can see the vast difference between, say, the early 2000s black and white top versus the Renaissance looking dress that I got from Hot Topic, which is still lip service. So even though those were a few years apart, that was a perfect example of how varied the aesthetics were when it came to lip service, because what they would do was when they would release a catalog, they would have several different lines, and they would all vary like that. So you would find things that were very Renaissance or very Vampira, and you would also find things that were the graffiti dress and Hollywood geisha and all of these other things. So there were really stark differences between all of the different lines. There was no cohesion there. So there was cohesion within the line where everything followed that one specific pattern. They were always the same fabric. Whereas you'd have like the skirt, the top, the dress, and then the men's was exactly the same fabric, and they would have their own designs. And that was that's the pattern everything would follow. But one line from the same season would look entirely different from another one. So you would never put, say, Gangsta Pranksta up against Vicious Velvet. So I'm starting to now remember the names of the different lines. I know that there's a website that archived a lot of the different lip service lines. They did a lot of them too, because I want to show you an example of just how varied a season was with the different lines. So it's like they would get basically everyone's aesthetic down. So there was really something for everyone. And I wish they would do that again. Oh, that would be amazing. And now with Afterpay, we'd be screwed. But I think a modern day lip service comeback would be awesome. Reproductions of their greatest hits and really take it back. Take it back to the 80s. I want to see some of those Kelly Bundy dresses again. But I want to show you what lip service sent me. I almost forgot. One of the things that lip service sent me is a dress. Not really my style, not something I would typically go for, but it's very cute. It's something I'm going to give away, so leave a comment if you want the dress. It's a size small, and I will send this out to you. But I'm going to style it. I'm going to try it on. I'm going to style it in a way to where it kind of suits my aesthetic. But I'm going to show you the dress. And I'm going to show you the other stuff they sent me. I'm stuck in my skirt. It's definitely a throwback to very early 2000s kind of mall goth style. And the straps are adjustable. See, this is actually something really important. It's also something that I look for in bras, because I'm a short girl, I'm tiny, and the distance between here and here is very short, but I got huge boobs that need support. I don't know why bra makers do this, but they only make the straps adjustable to here. We needed to go all the way to the front, and that is exactly what I look for. I look for things that adjust to the front. And if I have a shirt with, like, say, straps in any way that have adjustable straps, That is a huge green flag to me. We are not all built the same. We all have varied differences from shoulder to chestage, and we're going to require different lengths. So when I see things that have adjustable straps, that is a huge green flag to me. So kudos to Lip Service for doing that. That is a big deal. I'm going to try this on. I'm probably going to wear that. I think I'm going to put a long skirt under this. But I'm going to try this on anyway and style it up for you. I'm going to show you what else they sent me. The rest of the stuff I didn't open yet. That's right by the microphone. I don't want to blow people's eardrums out. It looks like, oh, it's like a wall banner. Look. So when I see the Lip Service dagger, that's one thing that really brings me back, because that is one of the earliest lines I remember from the 80s. So I love the whole Lip Service dagger. It's very nostalgic to me. They sent stickers too. So we have some Lip Service. Lip Service, from life unto death. And the classic. Oh, this is adorable. Ooh, I like this spiderweb line. There's more stuff in here too. Is that a keychain? Matches. More Lip Service stickers. It is a keychain, and I know just the jacket that I want to sew this onto. This might be an iron-on. Like that's going to tell me. Yes. I'm going to put this on my key ring right now. No, I'm not, because my keys are too far away. But I will. Let's have a look. It's the coffin with the Lip Service dagger. All of this is so nostalgic to me because, like I said, Lip Service had a stranglehold on so many of us back even in the early 2000s. But for me, it goes back even further, because Lip Service was one of the very first kind of brands that captured me as a little kid. And I know I'm thinking about it now, it totally seems like a trauma dump to be like, yeah, I saw it in a sex shop. My mom used to take me there all the time. It wasn't like that. My mom just knew a lot of strippers. She was a stripper back in the day. My mom still knew a lot of strippers. They were also doms and did lots of things. And they also worked in sex shops. So when I would go in there, and I would see all of this fashion, and I really did like the dresses because they really were cool and well done. And it wasn't just that context that I saw it in, because I also saw it on things like MTV. And then if you remember the show Married with Children, Kelly Bundy and all her friends, that's what they wore. I loved that look. It didn't seem in any way overtly sexual, and it didn't seem risque to me. It just seemed like really cool fashion. It never kind of clicked with me at the time. So it wasn't anything really disturbing. So like the dress that I showed you from 95, 96, the velvet, kind of sweetheart neckline, lace up, very vampire looking. The thing about that dress is that was my second introduction to Lip Service. So my first one, obviously I was too young to kind of don that look at the time, but my second introduction to Lip Service kind of being reintroduced, they were there kind of embodying exactly what I was looking for when I wanted it. And it's kind of interesting to have them with you along those journeys in your life. Fashion is very much like that for me. Alongside music, music is obviously, you've been here, you know, it's like a big deal to me. Fashion is another one. I've always been very much intrigued by fashion. I design fashion, I make it, I collect it. And I memorized a lot of it from back in the day. Like I remember outfits that I saw. I want to get to styling the dress, trying it on, and kind of giving you an idea of what it looks like. And just leave a comment if you want the dress. It's a size small, and I will pick a winner at random. Maybe I'll have one of my friends do it instead, because I don't want to seem like favoritism or anything like that. So leave a comment if you want it, and I'm gonna get to styling the dress now.